Rows of humanoid robots stand under hard factory lights, silent, upright, and almost familiar. From a distance, they look like workers waiting for a shift to begin. But that image hides the real problem. One robot can be impressive. A polished demonstration can walk across a stage, lift a box, wave to a crowd, or follow a simple command. Mass production is different. Mass production takes every weakness and repeats it again and again until the weakness can no longer be hidden. The confirmed story is modest but important. Robot companies are now talking less like laboratories and more like manufacturers. The public message is shifting from single breakthroughs to scaling production. That does not prove humanoid workers are already replacing people at scale. It does not prove that a new labor force has already arrived, but it does suggest the race has entered a more serious phase. Viral factory videos often show the satisfying part. Parts move down a line, panels are fitted, machines are assembled into bodies that look almost human. But the deeper question is not how a robot is built once, it is what turns that robot into a repeatable worker. Can every joint survive daily use? Can the sensors stay reliable? Can the battery last long enough? Can the software recover when the real world becomes messy? Can a customer trust not just the best unit, but the next unit and the one after that? This race is not only about artificial intelligence, it is about manufacturing, cost, supply chains, testing, maintenance, and trust. One theory is that the winner may not be the company with the most dramatic demo, but the one that makes reliability look boring. And that is where the mystery begins. If companies can already show walking robots on camera, why is mass-producing useful humanoid workers still so difficult? To understand why this moment matters, it helps to look at what has changed. For years, the most impressive humanoid robot clips were about breakthroughs in the lab. A robot takes careful steps, it recovers its balance, it lifts a box, it responds to a spoken command. Those demonstrations still matter. They show that machines are becoming more capable in ways that were once confined to research videos and science fiction. But the sharper signal now is different. Robot firms are increasingly talking about scale, not just whether a humanoid machine can be built, but whether it can be produced, tested, shipped, repaired, updated, trusted often enough to become useful outside a controlled demonstration. That shift has to be treated carefully. Public messaging is not the same as proven mass adoption. A polished launch video is not the same as a reliable product. A pilot program is not the same as a mature market. Different companies are also at different levels of technical and manufacturing maturity. Still, the direction of the story is clear enough to ask a new question. What happens when robotics moves from the show floor to the factory floor? A traditional industrial robot is usually designed for a world built around machines. It may be bolted to the ground, fenced away from people, and programmed to repeat a narrow motion thousands of times in a controlled environment. It can be extremely powerful, extremely precise, and extremely useful, but the workplace often has to be shaped around it. A humanoid robot begins with a different idea. Its body suggests a machine meant for spaces already built for human workers. Doorways, shelves, stairs, workstations, carts, tools, aisles. The basic theory is simple. If the world has already been designed around the human body, then a machine with a human-like form might be able to work inside. World without requiring every building to be redesigned from scratch. That is why factories, warehouses, logistics centers, and industrial sites appear so often in public discussions about humanoid robots. These are places where automation already matters, where repetitive tasks are common, and where the environment is more controlled than a city street. A private home, the confirmed fact is that these are common examples in the public conversation. The broader commercial impact remains uncertain. One theory is that the humanoid form becomes valuable not because it looks human, but because it can operate in a human-shaped workplace. A robot with legs, arms, hands, cameras, and balance could, in theory, move through existing infrastructure instead of demanding that every company rebuild shelves, doors, carts, and tools around a new machine. The speculation goes one step further. The largest prize may not be the most human-looking robot, it may be the robot that slips into ordinary workplaces with the least friction, a machine that does not require an entire factory to be redesigned, a machine that can do useful work in the spaces businesses already have. That is the part many process videos leave unresolved. They can show machinery, assembly, and the drama of a body coming together. But the deeper investigation is not only how a robot is made, it is whether that robot can become repeatable enough, affordable enough, and dependable enough to matter. The shape looks familiar, but the real breakthrough may be hidden in something less cinematic, the production line behind it. At first, the leap from demonstration to product seems simple. If a humanoid robot can walk across a stage, lift a box, keep its balance, and respond to a command, then mass production sounds like a multiplication problem. Build one, copy it, repeat. Fill the factory floor with identical bodies and the future arrives by the pallet. But that is where the illusion begins to break. A demo is usually a narrow window. The lighting can be controlled, the floor can be prepared, the task can be rehearsed, the robot can be watched by engineers who understand what might go wrong. That does not make the demo fake. It means the demo is only one kind of test. A product has to survive a different world. In that world, every joint has to move the same way again and again. Every actuator has to deliver force without drifting out of tolerance. Every cable has to bend repeatedly without becoming the weak point. Cameras, depth sensors, hands, batteries, thermal systems, and onboard computers all have to work together. Then the software has to interpret what the hardware is seeing, and the hardware has to obey what the software decides. If either side fails, the worker stops being useful. This is the part that does not always fit into a viral clip. Imagine one robot standing flawlessly in a spotlight. It turns, walks, grips an object, and places it exactly where it should. Now widen the frame. Behind it is a test line with many units. One freezes halfway through a motion, another takes a step too wide, another passes its movement test but runs hot, another needs a sensor recalibrated, another cannot close its fingers with the same force as the unit beside it. None of this requires a dramatic disaster. In manufacturing, small inconsistencies are enough to matter. A robot that works only when carefully tuned is not the same as a robot that can be built repeatedly, shipped, maintained, updated, and trusted near people and equipment. That is why one of the least glamorous ideas may be one of the most important: yield. In a complex factory, the real question is not how impressive the best unit looks. It is how many units pass inspection consistently and how much effort it takes to get them there. A humanoid robot is not a single invention. It is a stack of inventions that must all leave the production line in working condition at the same time. The body has to stand, the hands have to grip, the sensors have to see, the battery has to last, the software has to react. The whole machine has to behave predictably enough that a customer does not feel like every unit is an experiment. The confirmed picture is still cautious. Public evidence shows an industry trying to move from prototypes towards scale. It does not prove that humanoid workers have already become mass-market products. It shows companies testing whether the leap is possible. One theory is that the winners may not be the firms with the most cinematic robot demo. They may be the firms that make reliability look ordinary. The robot walks without drama, the hand closes without surprise, the battery charges, the update installs, the inspection passes, and the next machine does the same thing, because mass production changes the question: can one humanoid robot perform a task? Perhaps. Can large numbers of them perform it after shipping, after wear, after software changes, after a human supervisor trusts the system enough to use it again? That is the harder test. A humanoid robot factory has to manufacture the body, but the harder factory may be the one that manufactures trust, and that leads to the factory problem itself. Mass-producing humanoids means building machines that build machines meant to move like people. A single prototype can be adjusted by a small team, watched closely, repaired between demonstrations, and presented under conditions the company understands. A factory has a colder job. It has to turn that prototype into a repeatable object, not once, not for one perfect video, again and again, with parts arriving from suppliers, workers following procedures, software versions changing. Every unit needing to behave close enough to the last one that customers can trust it. At the factual level, scaling almost any complex machine depends on repeatable assembly, quality control, supplier reliability, and testing. With humanoids, those requirements collide in a difficult way. The machine has pieces that resemble consumer electronics: cameras, processors, sensors, wireless systems, and batteries. It has challenges that resemble electric vehicles: power management, heat, charging, and durable moving parts. It has the discipline of industrial automation, where machines must keep working in practical environments. And it has precision mechanical assembly, because a tiny error inside a joint, hand, cable path, sensor mount can affect the way the whole body moves. This is why the most revealing images may not be the dramatic ones, not the robot waving, not the robot walking onto a stage. The more important scenes may be quieter: robotic arms placing components, technicians inspecting joints, battery packs being tested, software being loaded, vision systems being calibrated, finished robots walking through test lanes before they are approved. Some manufacturing videos focus on 3D printing, and it is easy to understand the appeal. A printer building a complex shape layer by layer feels like a shortcut to the future, but it would be risky to treat additive manufacturing as the answer by itself. Some processes may use 3D printing for prototypes, custom parts, tooling, or faster iteration. One theory is that it could help robot companies redesign parts more quickly, especially while the product is still changing. But high-volume production usually still depends on many conventional steps: machining, molding, electronics assembly, fastening, calibration, inspection, and final testing. In other words, a humanoid factory is not powerful simply because it can make a human-shaped shell. The shell may be the easiest part to understand. The harder bottlenecks are the parts that make the body useful. Hands are difficult because human workplaces are full of awkward objects: handles, tools, packages, and surfaces. Balance is difficult because real floors are not always clean, flat, or predictable. Batteries are difficult because mobile robots need enough energy to work while remaining safe, compact, and not too heavy. Perception is difficult because a robot has to interpret clutter, movement, lighting, and uncertainty without becoming unreliable. And behind all of that is maintenance. A humanoid robot is not valuable only when it works on day one. It has to keep working after repeated use. Parts have to be replaceable, repairs have to be practical, software updates have to improve performance without creating new problems. Customers have to know what happens when something breaks. That is why a robot factory is also a support system. It is not just an assembly line. It is inspection, service, diagnostics, spare parts, training, and feedback from the field. Every failure teaches the manufacturer something, but only if the company can collect that information and turn it into a better machine. Factually, the public evidence shows an industry trying to scale. It does not prove that humanoid workers have already become a mature, mass-market product. The theory is that the company that solves manufacturing discipline could move ahead of the company with the flashiest demo. The speculation is that the first mass-produced humanoid workers may not look like general-purpose employees at all. They may begin as narrow machines, trained for repetitive tasks, watched by humans and improved through thousands of small corrections. The factory may be able to build the body, but can it mass-produce judgment, coordination, and common sense? That question changes the story from machines to consequences. The moment a human-shaped robot is called a worker, the conversation becomes larger than motors, sensors, batteries, and balance. It becomes a question about labor. Who does the dangerous job? Who works the late shift? Who gets trained for a new role, and who gets pushed out of the old one? This is why the phrase humanoid worker carries so much weight. A robot arm in a fenced industrial cell is easy to understand. It belongs to the world of machines. A human-shaped robot walking through a warehouse aisle, picking up a container, opening a door, or carrying tools enters a different emotional category. It looks like automation moving into spaces built for people. The confirmed fact is modest. Robot companies often talk about humanoid robots in connection with places where automation is already valuable: factories, warehouses, logistics centers, and industrial sites. These are environments where repetitive movement, physical strain, safety rules, and labor availability already matter. But that fact does not prove broad labor disruption has arrived. It only shows where companies believe serious tests may make sense. One theory is that businesses will begin in controlled settings, not in the open chaos of everyday life. A humanoid robot might first be assigned to a narrow task in a mapped area, with supervisors nearby and humans able to step in when something goes wrong. That is very different from replacing a skilled worker across an entire shift. It is closer to adding a new machine to an existing workflow, then discovering, slowly, whether it is reliable enough to deserve more responsibility. Another theory is that the earliest business case may not be one robot replacing one person. It may be filling gaps. A machine that can handle dull movement, lift objects, patrol a predictable route, or operate during hard-to-staff hours could be valuable even if it is not a full human substitute. In that version of the future, humanoid robots do not arrive as perfect general employees. They arrive as limited tools attached to specific jobs, measured by uptime, repair needs, safety performance, and cost. The speculation is where the debate becomes sharper. If these robots become practical, society will argue over who benefits. Employers may see productivity and flexibility. Workers may see risk, pressure, or the need to retrain. Regulators may ask who is responsible if a machine causes harm. Customers may ask whether a workplace filled with human-shaped machines feels efficient, unsettling, or both. It is important to separate fear from evidence. The existence of humanoid robot factories does not prove immediate mass unemployment. At the same time, the absence of immediate displacement does not make the technology irrelevant. Industrial change often begins quietly, with pilot programs, limited deployments, cautious buyers, and small adjustments to ordinary routines. The headline comes later, after the new pattern has already started to form. If several firms try to scale at once, the race may also change. The competition may move away from the most impressive movement demo and toward price, durability, safety, service networks, and customer confidence. A company may win attention with a video, but it wins trust when the machine keeps working after the video ends. That is why the first humanoid workers may not arrive with a dramatic announcement. They may appear quietly, one restricted job at a time. Return one more time to the image we began with. Rows of humanoid robots under bright factory lights, standing still as if they are waiting for work. At first glance, it looks like the finish line. It looks like the future has already been assembled, polished, and lined up for inspection. But that image may actually mark the beginning of the hardest phase. The confirmed story is modest but important. Robot firms are no longer only trying to prove that a humanoid machine can move, balance, lift, and respond. Many are now presenting themselves as companies preparing for scale. That shift matters, but it also has to be treated carefully because marketing videos, prototype demonstrations, pilot programs, and true mass production are not the same thing. A prototype asks whether something is possible. A pilot asks whether it can work in a limited setting. Mass production asks a colder question. Can the same machine be built again and again with consistent quality, predictable cost, and serviceable parts, then survive real workplaces after the excitement fades? That gives viewers three simple filters for the next wave of claims. First, how many robots can actually be built, not just displayed? Second, how reliably those robots perform when conditions are repetitive, boring, and imperfect. Third, whether customers keep using them after the demo ends, when the cameras are gone and the robot becomes part of an ordinary workday. One theory is that the winner of the humanoid boom may not be the company with the most human-looking machine, the most dramatic stage performance. It may be the company that solves manufacturing, maintenance, spare parts, software updates, safety checks, and customer trust. In other words, the race may be less about creating one astonishing robot and more about creating a system where 1,000 less astonishing robots can work without constant rescue. There is also a more cautious possibility. The first real humanoid worker factories may not produce general-purpose replacements for people. They may produce machines trained for narrow, practical jobs in controlled environments, where the value is not personality or appearance, but uptime, repeatability, and supervision. So the future may not arrive as a sudden army of robot workers. It may arrive through quality control rooms, test lanes, repair benches, software logs, and quiet deployments. Look less like science fiction than disciplined industrial routine. The next viral robot video may show a machine doing something impressive. The real signal will be whether another 1,000 can do it again, and that is why the factory matters. The question is no longer whether a humanoid robot can be made to move like a worker. The question is whether a factory can make that worker ordinary. For more investigations into the technologies being built just behind the headlines, keep watching and follow the next documentary.